This lecture covers Chapter 1, Quality Management in the Medical Laboratory. Several dictionaries define quality as the degree to which a product or service meets requirements. Laboratories need to provide quality to their customers in many forms. Most importantly, safe, comfortable phlebotomy experiences provided to all patients. Properly collected and labeled specimens provided for testing. Timely, accurate test results and reports provided to physicians and other healthcare personnel. Informative and helpful consultations and answers to questions. To best meet regulatory and accreditation requirements, the laboratory needs to bring a quality philosophy into all its activities. The path of workflow is a sequence of processes that begins with the input of the clinician's ordering of a test through the activities of sample collection, sample transport, sample receiving and accessioning, testing, review, report preparation, and report delivery. It ends with the output of accurate test results and interpretations back to the clinician. This slide depicts the sequence of activities in the laboratory's path of workflow. Please review each phase of the workflow, pre-analytic, analytic, and post-analytic, and be able to define what activities are in each phase. When these quality aspects are properly implemented, and the facility's management and staff are actively involved in monitoring and maintaining the QMS, true quality management has been achieved. It is useful to think of laboratory quality as a target, such as those used for archery or shooting practice. Quality control is the innermost circle of the target because the target for each and every laboratory test is accurate results. QA is the next outer ring of the target. QA is a set of planned actions to provide confidence that processes other than testing that influence the quality of the laboratory's results and reports are working as expected, individually and collectively. A quality management system is the outermost ring of the target, which encompasses all the management activities needed to ensure that the laboratory's workflow proceeds smoothly to provide laboratory services to customers and patients. In the laboratory's pre-analytic, analytic, and post-analytic activities, QC hits only the target's center, the analytic methods. Requirements for the type and frequency of QC are specified in regulations, accreditation standards, manufacturers' operator manuals, package inserts, and by state and local authorities. Regular performance of QC reveals when a method, piece of equipment, or procedure is not working as expected. Quality assurance answers the question, how does the laboratory know it is delivering a high-quality services to its customers? In QA, the laboratory measures its contributions to patient care by answering questions such as this. From how many patients did the phlebotomist attempt to collect a blood sample only to find that the patient was not wearing proper identification? How many samples are not acceptable upon receipt into the laboratory and from which locations do they come? How well does the collection time of the sample reflect the administration time of a therapeutic drug? QA is bigger than QC and covers all the pre-analytic, analytic, and post-analytic processes. All the management activities described in this entire textbook support the laboratory's ability to meet regulatory and accreditation requirements and fulfill the need for accurate results in a timely manner. A QMS includes both QC and QA, as well as the management activities described above and more necessary to make your laboratory's best contribution to patient care. The QMS Foundation model demonstrates that the QMS essentials are the foundational building blocks that support the laboratory's pre-analytic, analytic, and post-analytic workflow for all types, sizes, specialties, and scopes of laboratories. The QMS essentials are in a logical order that can be explained for any new or changed laboratory test or service. For example, the laboratory organization develops its mission, vision, values, goals, and objectives around the tests and services it plans to offer. The laboratory should have a customer focus by determining the needs and expectations of its various customers and designing its processes and procedures to meet those needs as well as meet all applicable regulatory and accreditation requirements. For example, of each of the categories of quality system essentials under the lab, the work and measurement, please refer to page 11 to 15 in your textbook. Laboratories need to comply with all applicable requirements to maintain licensure and accreditation. Remember that quality cannot be inspected into a process because regulatory and accreditation inspections only find deviations and deficiencies after they have occurred. This slide represents a comprehensive list of QMS essentials the facility should constantly strive for continual improvement. Laboratories need to maintain the communication resources that will alert them to current, new, and changed requirements. The type and size of the laboratory determine the configuration of the laboratory's QMS. The laboratory needs to participate in not only the laboratory quality initiatives, but also organizational quality-related activities and the organization's continual improvement program. There may also be a quality steering committee composed of senior managers and department staff who operationalize the quality objectives and strategies and implement process improvements. The laboratory should have a customer focus by determining the needs and expectations of its various customers and designing its processes and procedures to meet those needs as well as meet all applicable regulatory and accreditation requirements. For all types of laboratories, internal customers are the laboratory employees themselves. Effective separation is needed between adjacent laboratory sections when there are incompatibilities or the change of cross-contamination. In hospitals, the TJC mandates an environmental control program that addresses all significant environmental issues for facility management and maintenance. Competence assessment challenges can include direct observation of job task performance, review of records, and written, verbal, or practical tests. Equipment, reagents, and materials need to be purchased and adequate stores maintained in inventory. In hospital-based laboratories, contract and purchasing issues are usually handled by the hospital's purchasing department. Laboratory personnel may or may not have control over the specific vendors with which the organization has agreements to purchase supplies or materials. The laboratory needs an equipment management plan that meets manufacturers' regulatory and accreditation requirements. Laboratory records of all installation, calibration, maintenance, use, troubleshooting, service, and repair activities are required to be maintained for the life of the equipment's use and for specified times after decommission. Process control is a means to build quality, safety, and effectiveness into the product or service from the beginning. The best tool for understanding a process is to flowchart it. Flowcharting graphically represents the sequence of activities in a process and shows how the inputs are converted into outputs. Such charts help people develop a common understanding of a process. Mapping a new process facilitates understanding of where resources will be needed for successful accomplishment. The boxes in the flowchart represent activities performed by one person. These activities need instructions that answer the question, how do I do this activity? Although some laboratories may combine all this information into one very long document, often called an SOP, it benefits both the laboratory and the reader to graphically depict the activities in their correct sequence in a process flowchart and write separate instructions for each activity. Procedures provide instructions for each activity in the larger process. For example, the process to collect a blood sample involves the defined sequence of greeting the patient, verifying the patient's identity, assessing the patient's condition and vascular access, washing one's hands, assembling the appropriate collection materials for this collection, collecting the sample by venipuncture or capillary puncture, labeling the sample, and preparing the sample for transport to the laboratory. The process activities need to be performed in the correct sequence to ensure the correct end result. For example, one is never to label the samples before identifying the patient. To ensure that new processes will work as intended, they are required to be validated before being put into use. Validating the new testing process ensures that it will perform as expected with the laboratory's workflow, instrumentation, personnel, written procedures, and information systems. Training needs to be documented, and personnel competence in the new process and procedures needs to be verified before the new test is implemented in the live environment. This routine process controls monitor whether a process is functioning as needed. Regulations require that all laboratories participate in proficiency testing for specified diagnostic laboratory tests. Documents provide instructions for work processes and procedures. Performing the procedures generates records of work performance. Examples of documents include written policies, process flowcharts, procedures or instructions, forms, manufacturer's package inserts, computer software, instrument operator manuals, and copies of regulations and standards. Both documents and records must be controlled to provide evidence that regulations and standards are being met. A typical document control system is structured as a pyramid. A structured document control system links a laboratory's policies to respective processes and procedures and ensures that only the latest approved versions of documents are available for use. When entries are made into a blank form, either paper or a computer screen, the form becomes a record. Regulations and accreditation requirements mandate the review of records by supervisory personnel and specify the type of records and length of time they need to be stored for possible future reference. State, local, and facility requirements for record retention periods may also apply. Records need to be stored in a manner that allows access by authorized persons and prevents damage or inadvertent destruction. For example, maintaining the confidentiality of privileged patient information is mandated by government regulations. The laboratory's information handling processes need to ensure that confidentiality is preserved. The laboratory also needs to verify that the integrity of any data or information sent inside or outside the facility is maintained, whether the medium used is paper-based or electronic. For example, the facility needs to verify that the processes for faxing, emailing, or sending information across instrument and computer interfaces maintains the original information without adulteration. Non-conformance management is one for such a process. Other commonly used names include occurrence, incident, or variation management. The table provides some definitions of terms used to further classify laboratory non-conformances. Information about events involving the laboratory that deviate from accepted policy, process, or procedure needs to be captured and acted upon. An internal laboratory non-conformance management system captures and analyzes information about non-conformances that occurred across the entire laboratory workflow, whether or not a patient was involved. All staff needs to understand that conformances present information about laboratory processes that do not work as they should, and thus, knowledge of these problems provides opportunities for improvement. Complaints received in the laboratory are also considered nonconformances. A standard report form can be used to capture information on all occurrences. Supervisors and quality function personnel record the nonconformances in a spreadsheet or database so that the resolution process can be tracked. Remedial actions most often do not address the real cause of the problem, which can be determined only through investigation. Therefore, investigation of complaints or errors provides an opportunity to identify factors that contributed to the problem. Process improvement tools are used to identify the contributing factors and to determine the best way to remove them through implementing corrective action. The nonconformance reporting process needs to be clearly defined so that information is tracked and acted upon and feedback is provided. Medical device-related deaths, injuries, and adverse events need to be reported to the FDA. Unlike externally delivered compliance inspections, internal audits assess a specific laboratory process and determine, by review of documents and records, conducting interviews, and observing staff in action, whether the laboratory is following its own processes and procedures as well as meeting applicable requirements. There are two types of external assessments: proficiency testing or PT and inspection or assessment or survey. In PT, the laboratory receives samples for testing from a designated PT provider and performs the testing using its routine processes, procedures, and staff. Results are compared to those of the PT provider and the other laboratories, and the laboratory gets a report of its performance. Opportunities for improvement can be identified from at least the 6 main sources listed in this slide. Summaries and data from the above sources should be periodically be put into a report, often called the quality report, that is sent to the laboratory's management team for review. The importance of the problems will be unique to each laboratory's situation. Teams need good team skills to perform their assignments successfully. Members of teams, including laboratory technologists, scientists, and management staff, should receive team building and problem resolution training to ensure that most effective outcome for the time and resources expended. Many approaches to the problem-solving process have been published. All the published problem-solving approaches contain essentially the same activities as shown in this Table 1-8. A formalized problem resolution process is just one piece of continual process improvement and may contain the steps listed in this slide. I hope this lecture and chapter has introduced you to quality management in the medical laboratory. Purchasers of healthcare services want evidence that healthcare providers such as hospitals and laboratories are involved in organization-wide quality improvement programs that increase patient safety. Only those organizations demonstrating measurable quality improvements are approved for agreements to provide products and services. The cultural change needed to create a QMS takes time. You, as a manager, must be able to create and promote this quality management culture in order to be successful. Consumers of laboratory services accept no less than total quality. Laboratories that provide less will not survive.